I'm Ridley Scott. I've just completed production on my latest picture since Alien, Blade Runner.
Sure made hell for the construction crew.
Starring Harrison Ford.
In the meantime, Harrison's just sitting there waiting to act and getting pissed off.
13 or 14 or 15 takes at time, so that you couldn't tell the difference between one and the other.
Going, and when it's over, I think I've wasted my time.
It was a failure, basically. I mean, that's all it was. Yeah.
Let's take it back to the 80s. Alien has just come out, and Ridley Scott was a red-hot director. So red-hot, he got signed on to direct Dune. While he was knee-deep in development, a producer friend, Michael Dealey, came to him with a script called Dangerous Days, and asked him if he wanted to direct it. Ridley declined.
Dune would be a step very, very strongly in the direction of Star Wars.
At this point, something rather sad happened, which is that Ridley's older brother died.
To coin a phrase, freaked out, felt I had to go to work. And so I called Michael and said, you know that film of Hampton's, I'd like to do it.
Before we fast forward into production, there's one thing we should go over. Blade Runner's initial studio went belly up 2 weeks before shooting. The new deal was for a total of $21 million. $14 million of that came from Alan Ladd Jr. and Run Run Shaw, but the last $7 million came from a newcomer, Tandem Group. They chipped in the final $7.5 and got an interesting deal because of it. If the picture went over budget by 10%, they would pay for it.
Give me some money, please.
But they would take control of the film. This will be important later on. These men were not film people, they were TV people. So if the picture went over budget by around $2 million, inexperience would be calling the shots. Alright, fast forward to production.
The first day was not good. I'd gone in there and the columns were upside down, so I put the weight at the top.
He basically said, well, the only thing I'd like to do is turn the columns upside down. And I looked at him incredulously. What do you mean, turn them upside down? And he said, just that. Put that down here. I said, okay.
How long to cover the floor, turn each column over? He said, you won't be shooting at 12 o'clock.
I went to the first AD, told him, this is at 7 in the morning, come back at 2 o'clock, and we'll be ready to shoot. The director wants a change.
So on the first day, the columns are upside down, and everyone thinks that Ridley's a psychopath. But tensions didn't just go away, they got worse. Ridley took his sweet time filling up every frame with detail, while the soot and smoke choked the crew.
This was Ridley's dream and Ridley's vision, and he would not back off, and all the powers that be on top of it, you know, there was enormous pressure going on.
You know, on the film I became a screamer. I got really angry, and which is not good, because screaming doesn't get you anywhere, really. But just out of sheer frustration.
Who did you scream at?
Oh, just constant questions. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? I don't care how we're going to do this and how we're going to do that. It's when it's why are you doing this, that's really annoying, because I'm pretty qualified at this point.
It gets better. After 2 weeks of shooting, Ridley made the decision to reshoot their first scene. He felt like the lighting was too dark. You can imagine what the camera and lighting crews thought about that. But was Ridley really that bad? Well, I think this story sums up the dynamic pretty well.
In the case of the first property master who departed, it was over the mug on the desk in the Holden interview. The prop guy, brought in like 2 or 3 pens and maybe 3 or 4 mugs. Ridley wanted to see more, and he couldn't figure out, well, why would you want to see more? It's like only a mug and it's only a pen. I took the prop guy aside, I said, go buy like 100 mugs. Go buy like 100 pens. Don't you see what's going on here? Because I could see what was going on. He wanted to see every mug ever made before he chose that mug.
Ridley's a perfectionist, and Ridley came from the world of doing commercials from England, and he was very, very successful.
But a perfect eye doesn't make you a perfect director.
It's fair to say that Harrison and I were nearly always quarreling, and I think I lay that down partly at my feet, partly to do with the fact that I think I was so used to getting my own way.
But Harrison wasn't the only uncomfortable one. Sean Young, who plays Rachel, had a difficult experience in the film's romance scene. Other actors, like Rutger Hauer, loved their experience, but they were the exception, not the rule. Remember Tandem Group? They saw the skyrocketing budget and weren't too pleased. It didn't help that Ridley was shooting a ton of takes.
I say, explain to me, because I don't quite understand it. Tell me why this 16th take was the best one out of this whole group.
I was definitely very
different, look at things in a different light and put things in a different way. That's why you're hiring me. And I think that went on, definitely, and that's, you know, I acknowledge that.
He has got the best eye of anybody directing film that I know about. I mean, anybody. If you want to make a picture which looks stunning, as this picture had to do, then the best person you could get is Ridley.
By the end of production, they were over budget by $5 million, but they had bigger problems. Test screenings were not going well, so Tandem came up with a brilliant solution, adding a feel-good ending and a voiceover to make it more clear what the movie was about. Harrison Ford hated the idea of the voiceover so much that he did it poorly on purpose, hoping it wouldn't be used.
I never heard that from Harrison ever, that he hated it. If he did, he never told me.
It's just a movie.
Except they still used it. The only thing left to do now was release it. The audience reaction was mixed. A couple people loved it, but most watchers were confused.
They were like split. It was like the Red Sea. You know, here was the people that really were like stunned, and here were the people who were pissed off, you know. That's not LA, it's so depressing.
However, the critics were not divided.
Trying to give Blade Runner a pretty specific review. I didn't believe in the story, I didn't care about the characters. On the other hand, to look at the film, the set decoration, the design, the visual conception of this Los Angeles didn't get tired for me in 20 minutes.
This film, I think, is a waste of time. Pretty to look at, but a waste of time.
Any positivity for the film was drowned out by a deluge of negative press.
He's already dead.
And it didn't help that there were much more fun options to watch. The theatrical release was a disaster. The studios cut their losses and moved on. They did make some money with Laserdisc and DVD rentals, but it did little to stem the bleeding. Ridley moved on to his next project, and Blade Runner was chalked up to be a failure. Until 7 years went by. This is Michael Eric. He's a film archivist for Warner Bros. I'm gonna be honest, I tried to find a photo of Eric, but none of them I could confirm were actually him. But for some reason, Cloud was linked to him on the Blade Runner wiki page, so Cloud is Eric moving forward. Anyway, while on the lookout for a film called Gypsy, he discovered something interesting. A couple film canisters labeled Blade Runner London. After inspecting the film and finding it to be a genuine 70mm print, he decided to request it and catalog it for Warner Bros. The canisters arrive, and they go right on the shelf. Eric didn't watch the film because he thought it was just a copy of the international version, which would mean it had a few extra scenes of violence and nothing else. Fast forward another few months. The Fairfax Theatre was holding a special 70mm only print film festival, and they were looking for a copy of Blade Runner. Since Warner didn't have a 70mm copy on them, they turned to Eric. Eric said, sure. So Fairfax got their copy of Blade Runner. Festival goers arrived that morning to find tickets completely sold out and a packed theater, but Eric got in for free. Now remember, he thought it was a copy of the international version, but that wasn't what flickered onto the screen. What the audience saw was a rough work print, one that was screened to test audiences before it was released in theaters. That meant no crappy voiceover, no crappy ending, and a few extra bits and pieces. It was a completely new film. And the audience loved it. But Warner wasn't sure if this was a fluke or not. So they tested it by playing it in a couple other theaters.
What have we here?
Wherever it played, it broke house records. They contracted Eric to clean up the work print for a full re-release.
The commercial and critical revival of Scott's movie in the 90s suggested that history had finally caught up with Blade Runner. Indeed, wherever you looked, from the pages of cyberpunk fiction to the visuals of sci-fi cinema, the style of MTV, and even the design of multimedia advertising and communication, it was clear that Blade Runner had actually shaped the face of the future.